On Point is brought to you by National Baking Company.
Good evening and welcome to On Point. I'm your host, Kalila Reynolds.
And I'm Dennis Chung.
Well, Dennis, the threat of Hurricane Matthew has come and gone, and it's back to business now for most of us. Some of our friends in other countries, though, not so fortunate. They're trying to move on, but my gosh, it's tough.
Boy, you know, I really feel sorry for the people of Haiti because, I just don't know how much more that country can take. And one of the things that came to mind is, I remember in the 1960s when the JLP government at the time was building all these gullies, they call them the gully government. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the challenges Haiti has is that they don't have any gullies. And therefore all the water that comes straight into the villages and cause all this havoc.
Yeah.
You know, and then we have the Bahamas who also suffered, and the US also. So it was Cuba. A devastating storm, which shows that Jamaica is a really lucky country.
Extremely lucky.
You know?
I was looking at some of the footage from the Bahamas just yesterday. Yeah. Some entire communities have just been really, really devastated.
Yeah.
I think they've only had one fatality, which is good. I mean, compared to a Haiti, which has close to 1,000
But Haiti doesn't have the infrastructure.
They don't have the infrastructure. A lot of people have been saying that, well, our situation now is different than the 80s when Gilbert hit. But trust and believe that Hurricane Matthew at Category 4, you see what it did to Florida, a developed country.
That thing would have been a devastation if it came to Jamaica. I mean, we have a little rain fall for a few minutes and look what happened to Marcus Garvey. Flooded out because of how we live or the way we dispose of our garbage and all of that. And you know what surprised me also? You have some people who on social media are out there saying, boy, the government got the projections wrong and cursing the government. And these people are idiots, as far as I'm concerned.
They are.
You know, because how can you be saying something like that when if this thing had come down and hit us as a Category 4, it would have been
and keep in mind, all of the meteorologists were saying a couple of days before it reached Florida that it wasn't going to impact the United States, and it ended up hitting Florida. So it's not an exact science. We're grateful that it didn't hit, and now our focus is on the relief efforts, especially for Haiti. I know Food for the Poor is coordinating some relief efforts. I know ODPEM is also doing some good work there. So that's where our attention is.
And what we have done at the PSOJ is we have been coordinating with our members, and we have asked our members to put everything through Food for the Poor, and a lot of our members have responded and are now making contributions through Food for the Poor.
Excellent. Well, one of the things that Prime Minister Andrew Holness had been very concerned about regarding Hurricane Matthew is its impact on the economy. And that's where we take our conversation today. We're looking at economic growth. We'll have the Vice Chair and the Chair of the Economic Growth Council with us. But before that, we take a look back at some of the top business stories this week. Taking the number 5 spot is Bank of Jamaica Governor Brian Winter. He's been named the Caribbean's top central bank governor. The award was presented by Global Markets, which is a newspaper published by the IMF and World Bank. The paper cites his admirable stewardship during difficult times, as well as his co-chairing of EPOC, which oversees Jamaica's program with the IMF. Business and consumer confidence in Jamaica dipped in the third quarter, but remain at their highest levels in 15 years, taking the number 4 spot this week. Market Research Services, which publishes the quarterly survey, says firms have maintained their confidence that the new government programs will establish renewed economic growth. At number 3, reverse mortgages could be coming to Jamaica. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the government is evaluating the possibility of introducing reverse mortgages to the local market. Reverse mortgages are targeted towards elderly homeowners who need additional income. The bank gives the homeowner a monthly payment. In at number 2 is Samsung, which has finally decided to throw in the towel on its flagship Galaxy Note 7 smartphone. The decision to permanently discontinue the Note 7 is expected to cost the company up to $17 billion in lost sales revenue. Analysts say Samsung may have to cut fourth-quarter profit estimates by as much as 85%. The Korean company made the decision after reports that replacement phones were also catching fire following a massive recall of the devices. And your top business story this week is Jamaica's new agreement with the IMF. The government and the IMF made the announcement late on Thursday. The new deal is a 3-year standby arrangement, giving Jamaica access to $1.7 billion, almost double the current arrangement, which ends early next year. The funds will be available only on a needs basis as a sort of insurance policy against unforeseen economic shocks beyond Jamaica's control. However, the IMF says $430 million will be available immediately.
When we come back, we talk economic growth.
Welcome back. 5 in 4, that was the big promise made by Chairman of the Economic Growth Council, Michael Lee Chin. Mr. Lee Chin has been dubbed the growth czar, and a lot is expected of him and the EGC.
Here, let's take a look back at the press conference where he laid out the plan for achieving 5% in 4 years.
So as chairman of the ECG, I pledge that the ECG will work tirelessly and passionately to achieve a GDP growth rate of 5% over the next 4 years of our term, which is 10 times more than what we have seen over the last 20 years.
That's the bold target for GDP growth set by the EGC chairman Michael Lee Chin. He believes the time is ripe for Jamaica to capitalize on favorable economic conditions to catalyze the growth for which the nation is desperate.
This is our moment because today we have competitive telecommunications pricing, and hence we can attract call centers and BPOs as an example. 5 years, 10 years ago, we couldn't do that because we didn't have competitive pricing in telecommunications. Secondly, we have competitive pricing. We're not at a disadvantage in terms of energy cost anymore. The price of energy has fallen, so the table has been leveled in our favor, right? Relative to any other point in time. Also, we have done a great job at bringing our fiscal house out of the shambles and now back to some order. So now is an ideal time. The table is set perfectly.
The growth czar also endorsed the continuation of a relationship with the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in order to maintain fiscal prudence, as Jamaica has displayed indiscipline in that area.
Fiscal prudence can only help. So however we get fiscal prudence, however we impose fiscal prudence on ourselves, whether it's with the help of the IMF or being self-disciplined, which I don't trust, right? We have to be fiscally prudent.
Mr. Lee Chin acknowledged that the task of the EGC to accelerate growth was a challenging one, but says he owes the country a debt of duty to help provide opportunities for success, similar to those he received as a young man in high school.
My reason for taking on this challenge is because, given where I'm coming from, and given the enablement of growth, I feel a debt of duty that my situation and my energy can be used to give every Jamaican child the opportunity to have the same fulfillment as I have in my life. That's the reason I'm doing it.
And we're joined now by Chairman of the Economic Growth Council, Michael Lee Chin. Later on, we'll also be joined by his Vice Chair, Dr. Nigel Clark. Welcome to On Point.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Mike. Good to have you here. Let me start by asking you. This is a tough job that you've taken on, but we know you can do it. If anybody else can do it, you can do it. What is your vision of achieving this 5 in 4? What do you think are the possibilities?
Well, if I didn't think it was highly probable, I wouldn't have accepted it. Because today, the stars are lined up for growth. Firstly, we have had macroeconomic stability, which was started by the previous administration. Secondly, we have today energy price that's down 50%. Thirdly, we have the multilaterals that are cheerleading us, firstly, we have telecommunications price down, and hence we can have new industries. We have gone through a period of consultation with 85 stakeholder meetings. And having gone through that period of consultation, we have a very good idea as to what the solutions are, because we are told what the solutions are by going through the 85 meetings. So our report, which is summarized in the 5 in 4 initiatives, eight initiatives, are not a reflection of our own native thoughts. They are a reflection of what we heard from the 85 stakeholders of Jamaica.
But at the same time, you mentioned the stars being aligned. One of the stars that's not in line, though, or two other stars, high crime, and also the IMF has revised the global outlook downward, including for Jamaica and the region. So we're looking at those challenges as well.
High crime and citizen security is a priority. And so that is one of the initiatives that we have to address. So, you know, the initiatives are telling us that things aren't perfect, and we have to deal with them. Citizen security is top on the list. The fact that the IMF is saying our growth rate is going to be, what did you say?
It's lower than it was projected to be.
That was before the EGC.
No, this was just last week.
The EGC, we were inaugurated on the 27th of April.
Yeah.
We expect to get 5% in 4 years.
In other words, before you can do it, you have to believe it.
Exactly.
Right? And I like that, because, you know, one of the things that I see happening now that wasn't happening before. I mean, we've gone through the Vision 2030 plan and all of that, but we've never really created a vision for everybody in Jamaica. And this is what I'm hoping will come out of it, based on how you've been approaching it and everything. And if anybody can do it, you can do it.
Well, Dennis, if you're confident about anything, there's a difference in your behavior versus if you're not confident. Right? If you're confident that you can scale Mount Everest, when you come to the foot of Mount Everest, you look up, you can say, bring it on.
Yeah.
If you're not confident, you can say, my gosh, look at this mountain. Right? We are confident that because this stage is set, and because we recognize that what has been the downfall with previous reports is that they have not been implemented with vehemence, with passion, and with continuity. This is different, because what we did is, as soon as we wrote the report, we published it in the form of the supplement, which came out in the Observer and the Gleaner twice.
Yes.
And we're going to follow up with a hard launch. So every Jamaican, which will be simulcast, broadcast to Jamaica. So every Jamaican, whether you are a farmer, a professional, a teacher, you will know what 5 in 4 mean to you.
Now, publishing this does set the bar high for accountability, because every citizen now has access to it if they've purchased the newspapers, and you can look at what the targets are. But one of the criticisms already has been that you don't have any timelines for when these things are to be achieved. So how do you measure? And that's one of the issues with government bureaucracy too. You set these targets, but there's no timeline, and it just drags on and forever. And 10 years from now, you're still talking about the same things.
It says 5 in 4.
So all these things are to be accomplished
achieved
in
4 years.
Everything in this plan?
Yes. 5 in 4.
You're going to have timelines within that 4 years.
So each initiative has sub-initiatives. And the sub-initiatives, for instance, today we embarked on the implementation of the first sub-initiative, which is access to financing. So present in that room, we had the DBJ, we had the BOJ, FSC, PIOJ, Exim Bank.
Do you think that we have the political leadership and the public sector leadership that will help us to carry this through? Because that's going to be very important.
Well, Dennis, that is important. Also, implementation is important. Because remember, all the council members are taking a very big reputational risk for being here.
That's true.
So before we accepted the job, we have to negotiate with the government as to what their responsibility really is and what our responsibility will be, representing the private sector. And the conclusion was government, and they have accepted it. Yes. Their responsibility will be singular to enable and facilitate, right? Once they do that, it's private sector's responsibility to get growth.
So therefore, if they are not fulfilling their responsibility, you will let us know as a nation.
So once per quarter, and this is where transparency will really be important. In addition to publishing the report, we will have the implementers. We'll meet with them once per month, and then once per quarter, we will, because we're not going to be implementing. The ministries, department, and agencies will implement. We'll quarterback it.
You're monitoring.
We'll monitor them and set the stage, and also remove whatever friction they may come across. But once per quarter, we will, on national TV, go through where we should be, given that we're going to be 5 and 4, where we should be in that quarter, which milestones we have missed, which milestones we have exceeded, and who has not been carrying, pulling their weight.
There's some accountability. That's
public accountability. This has never been done before.
Yes.
But it's this type of seriousness and transparency that we need to get the economy going, jobs and opportunities for Jamaicans.
I really like that. I'm looking forward to your press conference when you start telling us about the deliverables and what has been achieved and not achieved so far to date. Looking through this call to action as well, though, we see some of the things that you have in this are capital intensive. You need some money to implement them. Has the government made the commitments to the financing of some of the things that you want to do?
Well, as a business person, starting from zero, I've always lived by the mantra, you have to substitute deep pockets with creativity, right? In other words, I didn't have any money when I started business, but I had high aspirations, so I had to be creative. Likewise, these initiatives, a lot of them don't really need that much money.
Most of them don't, but some of them do.
It's just a matter of someone who has the fervor, the passion, the leadership to get people to inspire people to get things done. And that is what is happening,
But when you talk about relocating the tax department, for example, to a building with more parking and stuff like that, that will require some money.
Yes. So we will find the money.
You'll find the money.
Yes.
That's positive thinking.
And as you put some of these things in place, more money will come to the government. Because I tell you something, the latest fiscal numbers is showing that the tax revenues are 5% over. All they've done really is improve the system of collection, you know. So I expect that if some of these things are implemented, then we will start to see the fiscal situation improve. And that's where we really need to go as a country, because what we've been doing before is we weren't thinking outside the box like what you're doing now. So we just tax people more.
Yes.
And placing more pressure on them.
Well, we may have to reallocate funds, right, to the most important initiatives to get jumpstart the economy.
That's always a tricky one, though, because everybody always wants more funds for their department, their agency.
Well, we have to prioritize.
I want to take a look as well at some of the initiatives that you proposed regarding the diaspora. You proposed this agency called GlowJam. Tell us some more about what you envision for the partnership with the diaspora.
Well, the diaspora, as we know, is over 3 million people, Jamaicans. And they're much more wealthy than us.
You're a member of the diaspora.
Yes, than us here in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So they are an important entity that we have completely not tapped. But every diaspora, every Jamaican emigre has that emotional connection with Jamaica. They would love to come back to Jamaica and invest in Jamaica. Now, the big initiative that we will have with them is we can't go back to the diaspora and say, please, diaspora, send another 20% to uncle or aunt or mommy. But what if we went to the diaspora and explained to the diaspora exactly what it is we're doing? We're gentrifying Jamaica. And you see, I had an experience in 2007. And in 2007, I was in New York. I was being given an award by the Abyssinian Baptist Church. And the then Reverend Calvin Butts said, did you realize that in the last 40 years, there has been only one high school built in Harlem? Now, Harlem abuts Central Park. Harlem is in the middle of Manhattan. And I was aghast. One high school built in 40 years in Harlem? And it was not, he continued by saying it was not built by the federal government, nor the state government, nor the city government. It was built by the Abyssinian Baptist Church.
Wow.
So the Abyssinian Baptist Church has been at the heart of gentrification of Harlem. In other words, the kick started it. And now that Harlem is gentrified, he continued. The problem now is, with gentrification, asset values revalued.
Yes.
Assets revalued. So the price of real estate in the last 10 years went up by 10 times. And the natives of Harlem were not traditional asset owners.
Right.
So they're being displaced.
Exactly.
So in Jamaica, when I heard that, I immediately, every time I speak, I tell that story. Because we are gentrifying Jamaica. And asset values in Jamaica will revalue upwards once Jamaica is gentrified.
So where will those people go, the displaced people?
No. So the point is, we can learn from the Harlem experience.
Right.
And we now should
equip our people.
We, in order to pray for rain, make sure you bring your umbrella. So therefore, having seen the Harlem experience, we in Jamaica should realize we're better buy assets in Jamaica right now because they're undervalued. I'll tell that story in the diaspora also. Because the diaspora, they have long-term savings. As I said, it will be difficult to ask them to send more money to Granny. But how about if they knew that Jamaica was a fantastic place to invest, they could now take some of their long-term savings and put it to Jamaica. So that will be the thrust.
And you're proposing a Jamaica bond. It's been proposed before, but I feel like with a leech-in type of credibility, you might get some buy-in.
Well, it's not only a Jamaican bond, but a Jamaican equity fund, right? Or Jamaica a private equity fund, whereby, because we can't afford to take people's money and put it into unserious investments. We have to invest in institutional quality assets that they can't buy or invest in North America or in England.
Right.
So we will make it attractive for them to invest in power distribution, power generation, toll roads, ports, airports, energy, which these are asset classes that the average person in England or North America can't access. We will give them access to that, which are institutional type investments. So we will make it attractive for them to want to invest. And knowing that there is gentrification happening, we are confident that they will invest. And again, remember, I can tell that story because I'm an investor in Jamaica.
Right.
So there is a credibility.
All right, well, at this point, we will take a break. When we come back, Dr. Nigel Clark will join us. We continue the discussion here on Point with the Economic Growth Council. Welcome back. We are continuing the discussion about growing Jamaica's economy with the Economic Growth Council.
But before we continue, here's a little bit more about the plan dubbed Call to Action.
Reports coming from the Economic Growth Council EGC is that strategic projects must be implemented in a timely manner if the country hopes to meet its 5% growth target by 2020. In a supplement published in the Sunday Gleaner, the EGC noted that current projects have the potential to transform towns and communities and increase competitiveness. However, there needs to be a sense of urgency regarding the implementation of the projects. The Economic Growth Council pointed to the projects such as the Cayman Special Economic Zone and other Special Economic Zone projects, the renewal and redevelopment of downtown Kingston, BPO outsourcing sector projects, development of various integrated resort development projects, upgrading and expansion of agro-parks and agro-processing, the implementation of major tourism projects, construction of the Montego Bay Bypass and other road projects, water supply and distribution projects, renewable energy projects, and mining projects. The council noted that most of these projects are driven by the private sector or through public-private partnerships. That's why the council has indicated that focus will be placed on a method of implementation that encourages the government to enter into an action-oriented declaration of intent with the EGC, private sector groups, unions, and civil society. The EGC noted that this would underscore the government's commitment to the specific policies that fall under each growth initiative, consistent with the terms of reference of the EGC. For BATV News, I'm Anthony Morgan.
Mr. Leachin rejoins us now. We're also joined now by Vice Chair of the Economic Growth Council, Dr. Nigel Clark. Good. Welcome to On Point.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Nigel. Welcome back, Mike. Nigel, can you, since you just joined us, just give us your overview of the plan? What are the important things in it before we get into the nitty-gritty of it?
Sure. Well, you know, the growth initiatives or the process of arriving at growth initiatives, you know, involves trying to build consensus in society around a series of reforms that can be undertaken that facilitate and underpin growth. And great care was taken to choose a set of measures that can have an overwhelming impact on the thousands of businesses, not sectoral in any way, but things that affect the thousands of businesses and the tens and hundreds of thousands of employees in Jamaica. And that can improve the enabling framework for people to seek opportunity and for enterprise to thrive, creating a kind of society that is meritocratic, where ideas reign supreme and where people can take risk and be rewarded.
Yeah, and you know, I like that, because in the past what has happened is that we really have had situations where government pick winners. And isn't it just a matter, Mike, of just ensuring that there's access to capital, for example, freeing up capital, making capital work? I mean, you would know that coming from your background.
Well, as Nigel just said, our aim is to create a more meritocratic society. And today we really have a capital aristocratic society, yes. An intellectual aristocratic society, an access aristocratic society. So one of the aims is to make sure that we break down that barrier and give everybody, as if they qualify obviously, access to finance. So it's the most important enabler, as we know.
How do you do that, though?
I mean, access to finance has been pointed to by many studies as a limiting factor to enterprise and to growth. The fact that small businesses can't access the funding they require to grow, businesses that want to start can't find access to the finance to start. Solving it is not you can't wave a magic wand and solve that problem. But of the things that we have recommended, one of the hurdles to access to finance lies in regulation that restricts capital and restricts where capital can go. Simple things that how we account for, or the requirements we make on collateral, for example. One of the big problems with access to capital is the requirement for collateral, and many people don't have collateral. Right. A program that was started a few years ago and which we recommend be increased is a program at the Development Bank of Jamaica, where for good projects, the Development Bank will provide a collateral guarantee for 80% of the loan amount, and so the entrepreneur has a better chance of going to the bank and being able to borrow. We would like to see that program, increase rapidly. So there are regulatory changes that you can make. There are competitive changes that can be made. One of the perennial challenges that's spoken about, and we would not be fully representative of the views of the people who we have canvassed if we didn't mention this, that there's a lot of complaint about the size of the spread in the banking market between deposits and loans, but that in itself is a result of other factors. Result of the overtaxation of the financial sector, and as a result of other things that we recommend be looked into. But broadening access to finance is crucially important, and not just debt finance, but equity finance as well. You need equity to grow, and the opportunities for equity finance in Jamaica outside of friends and family, and most of us don't have friends and family who have excess money to invest in a business. So we need formal means of getting that.
So you had given an example on the MCT. Mike, can you explain what that is? I mean, the challenge with that.
It's minimum capital test, which is a capital requirement for general insurance companies. The FSC is emulating the Canadian framework for regulations.
That's the Financial Services Commission.
Yes. In the United States, the MCT, which is the ratio of available capital divided by required capital, in the United States, it's 100%. In Canada, which is the emulated regulatory framework that we have accepted, we are emulating, it's 150%. In Jamaica, it's 250%. That increment of between Canada and Jamaica, between 150 and 250, means that insurance companies have tied up in capital approximately 10 billion Jamaican dollars.
It means there's a lot of money, a whole lot of money they're not lending.
Would have $10 billion worth of equity freed up, which would now be, which will now attract. You could now go to the bank with that equity and at least attract 1.5 times that in debt.
So that's $25
that's another
billion.
15 billion in debt. So we could now free up in just one stroke of the pen, go back to what the Canadian regulatory standard would free up $25 billion that could go into projects and create more opportunities.
These companies have sort of banded together, banking, insurance, and formed a kind of oligarchy. And so if you don't get one of them to do it, to break free of the oligarchy, so to say, you're not going to get the rest of them to do it, to fall in line.
I don't think you can say that we band together, because we certainly are very competitive in the marketplace. I tend
to forget you have another hat.
But all the institutions compete against each other. Yes. We may not have enough competitors, but those competitors that we have are fiercely competitive.
So one of the things that I know you always speak about, Nigel, and you start with, is this whole matter of citizen security and public safety. That is very critical, because crime is our #1 problem now, in terms of doing business. So, I mean, you want to address that?
Sure. I mean, crime is the #1 problem in Jamaica. It is the biggest obstacle to economic growth. Various studies point that out, and our everyday experience points it out. Crime limits access to opportunity. Crime limits the extent to which we are able to expand production. Crime limits the risks we want to take in other areas, and it constrains people to their homes. Dealing with crime is therefore absolutely crucial if we are to be serious about economic growth. Right? The relationship between crime and economic growth is not a straightforward linear one. But what we do know is that when crime is reduced, economic activity flourishes. And it is possible. It is possible for us to live in a Jamaica with normalized levels of crime. But it is going to require an approach that's comprehensive. Piecemeal, short-term action is unlikely to be successful. You have to simultaneously deal with problems in the justice system at the same time that you tackle the organization of the security forces and making sure that the security forces are, or the police forces, reoriented towards citizen security, where the protection of the citizen is the maximum objective, rather than the protection of the state from the citizen. You know, the police, and I can go on, so just cut me, but the police, the Constabulary Force Act is an act that was originally enacted in 1867, right after the Morant Bay Rebellion. And it was conceived in paramilitary terms. And we really, while we have amended it over the last 150 years, we really have not taken it out of the paramilitary embryo in which it was conceived. And modern police forces or modern police services around the world are built on a different principle, different philosophy. The organizing philosophy is one where you are protecting the citizen rather than protecting the state. And so what it means when you embrace a philosophy like that, what it means is that you're more mobile. You know, you're not housed in a police station. Every police station needs 6 or 7 people just to protect the station. What you want are police in communities across the length and breadth of Jamaica, interacting with citizens, having the trust of citizens. And the paramilitary part of it, you take it out of the police force and you have it stand alone to deal with organized crime, cases of terrorism, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I know what you're talking about, because I'm on the JSF review committee, and those are some of the things to look at. But and one of the things, I mean, you talk about the attitude. I think like community policing. We always talk about community policing in garrisons. We never talk about community policing in Narbucket, you know. So it's discriminatory to approach it like that. But as we look at these things from the social point of view, you are from Canada, Mike. So don't you think that social inclusion is critical in order for us to get the sort of development we want?
You know, Dennis, when I'm in Canada and I'm driving at night and I see women jogging down the street, I think, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we could have that type of security in Kingston, downtown Kingston, whereby my daughters would feel free to go jogging, right? That is what we have to work towards. In terms of social inclusion, elaborate, please. Elaborate.
Yeah, well, I mean, it involves everyone. It means everyone is included in this thing in terms of social development.
Well, as Dr. Clark said, our objective is to build a society that is more meritocratic, right? Everybody who has the desire, the will, and willing to work should have access.
And just on that point, social exclusion is dealing with social exclusion, which is the opposite of inclusion, is one of the key recommendations. We will not solve crime and violence unless we deal with social exclusion. 20% of Jamaicans live in informal settlements. These are settlements that are not planned, and therefore they have irregular access to services. In fact, social services don't exist in some of these informal settlements. You know, the health services can't get in, the police services can't get in. People live on streets that have no names.
They can't dispose of garbage properly.
You know that, you know, the garbage services don't reach, and therefore it creates a problem, and it creates, you know, you have the catalyst for antisocial behavior. Now, you can't blame the people in informal settlements, because there is a reason why those informal settlements
exist.
exist.
Votes. They're political votes.
Well, they're political votes, but no, informal people need somewhere to live.
Yes.
People need somewhere to live. And it is our responsibility as Jamaicans to ensure that we can solve this problem in a civilized way, where people are not forced to live in these informal communities where access to social services are restricted. And until we deal with that and deal with that forcibly. And so I want to make the point, Dennis, that this, you know, is probably one of the first times where you have it's a sort of a business group or a business focus making the connection between the welfare of Jamaicans and economic growth, right? Between the fact that, you know, what happens to the person in the informal settlement that on the North Coast affects economic growth in Kingston. And what, you know, what we want is the mobilization of public support behind these reforms and behind these initiatives, because whatever we support as Jamaicans, whatever we support as people, eventually gets done. Yeah? And dealing with social exclusion is of paramount importance to economic growth.
Definitely. We're running a little bit low on time, and I want to get your take on a couple of things before we go. As you both know, the IMF agreement is winding down now, just a few months to go before that agreement is over. And I wanted to get a sense of what you think the IMF's role in Jamaica should be after that agreement. Dr. Clark?
Yes, you're correct in your sort of description. The fund has played a crucial role in Jamaica over the past few years in underwriting economic policy and acting as insurance blanket, and as provided the mechanism for sound policies to be pursued. The IMF as a multilateral body belongs to its members and can't stay indefinitely in a country. So the next stage should involve some amount of graduation while retaining the essential tenets of fiscal consolidation, incorporation of growth policy, incorporation of sort of national security elements which are key to growth and key to us as Jamaicans, and paving the way eventually, not immediately, but eventually, for Jamaica and Jamaicans to take charge of its economic direction, economic destiny.
Do we need to continue a borrowing relationship with the IMF, Mr. Leachin, or are we at the stage already that we don't need to be asking them for any more money? And it's not asking as in you ask, I ask, you give. It's a loan that has to be repaid.
Well, the ultimate is we want to make sure that our fiscal house is so strong that we can get a very good bond rating on the international markets and be able to borrow without the IMF at our behest.
That would be ideal. How far away from that are we now, though?
I mean, we recommend enter into a successor arrangement with the fund that sees Jamaica continuing a prudent fiscal path. Just to Mr. Leachin's point and to your question, when we entered in a relationship in 2013, our situation was very different than it is today. Jamaica did not have access to capital markets. It had reserves that were extremely low, and it had, a deep structural weaknesses. To a large extent, the situation today is very different. We have access to markets in terms of being able to borrow, and we have made deep structural reforms, and therefore it's not necessary for the IMF to lend us cash, but what they can provide is some type of security insurance blanket that if we find ourselves exposed to external shocks,
we can draw down
as required. Now, you asked a very good question. When are we going to get to the stage that we don't need an insurance blanket from the fund in the form of a program?
Right.
That must be the goal of every Jamaican. And we can get to that stage when we have had a sustained period of economic growth, and where our balance of payments are healthy over a long period of time, and our reserves are much higher than they are today.
After 5 and 4.
After 5 and 4.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you both for joining us, Dr. Nigel Clark and Michael Leachin, Chairman and Vice Chair of the Economic Growth Council. When we come back, we'll give you some of the numbers as well as the word on the street. Welcome back to On Point. Well, we've been talking economic growth for the past 45 minutes or so. So we thought it would be useful to take a look at some of the historic patterns of Jamaica's growth. Here are the numbers.
Jamaica has traditionally experienced low growth, but things are beginning to look up. The economy grew 1.6% in the third quarter of 2016. Compare that with China and India, where growth is slowing down, although they continue to be among the leaders in growth at 6.7% and 7.1% respectively. In the region, the Dominican Republic is showing extraordinary growth at 8.7%. Growth in the United States has fallen to just 1.3%. While Trinidad and Tobago, still reeling from the fall in oil prices, is experiencing negative growth of 5.2%.
And our On Point team hits the street, and we ask Jamaicans, what do you think it will take for us to get economic growth finally?
Hard work, dedication, have to get rid of the crime. That is one of the major problem now. That hinder investment from coming to our country. And if we can get rid of crime, then I think we'll be on the right track to grow our economy.
In this country now, well, we need more cooperation for, you see, the cleanliness of the country. Yeah, we need the cleanliness of the country, and we must try to keep it as clean as we can, as to attract tourists and any other type of thing that's can help you in this country.
Perhaps they could reduce or play or get a better or more involvement in actually reducing the price of stuff. Then persons would have more spending ability. And I see that, you know, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness seems to have a hand in that, because he wants to give you more by reducing the PAYE.
I think the government should invest in agriculture, because we have a lot of products here in Jamaica that we can use. Not only we can, if we like, say for instance, we have banana chips, we like, you know, find other products, you know, other things that we can make from a certain product. Not just only have one thing, but, you know, create some factory that we can develop some new types of products.
I think, number one, we should have more jobs created for the poorer classes, because, you know, you have people out there need jobs, and in that case, you have less crime will go down, and the more you get jobs, fun jobs for the people, we can even see a better country.
More production. Young people can get some more work. They cut down on all the violence.
Well, first, I think have a plan, work towards it, and then execute. In a nutshell, basically, that's my take.
Well, it's sure been a good show, Dennis. That was a hard getting Mr. Leach in and Dr. Clark here at the same time, but it was a great discussion.
Yeah, and I mean, if anyone can do it, I think Mike Leachin can do it. I mean, he has shown what he can do to transform companies. NCB, for example, when he took that over, and look what he has done with it today. I'm impressed about the part about the accountability. And, you know, having that thing where you're communicating with the population, whether it is printing this publication or going on the television every quarter and speak about it and hold the politicians and the authorities accountable to this commitment that they've made to the Jamaican people.
I'm definitely looking forward to those press conferences where they basically tick off the things in these documents and say what has been accomplished, what's outstanding, and who hasn't been doing their job. I also found it very instructive what Mr. Leachin said early on, that all the members of the EGC, their reputations, personal reputations are on the line, because if they fail, they'll say Michael Leachin is a failure.
They're not going to say Andrew Holness or whoever is a failure. They're going to say
he doesn't want that. None of the members of the council want that. Their reputation is attached to it, and so we know that they're going to put their all into it.
Yeah, and you know what Nigel said also about the fact that what we're really looking at is creating an environment of safety for people and for capital. You know, so we're not going about it the way we normally do, where we target certain pockets and say, this is how we need to improve this, and we think everything will trickle down. No, we need to create an environment that's safe for everyone, as Mike Leachin said, that the women can run on the streets downtown at night. and feel safe, or capital can come in and freely invest, not be restricted by a regulatory environment.
Yeah, people who have the ideas to take our economy to the next level, to build the new businesses with the new ideas, the new products, the new services, can actually get the capital that they need to finance the business the type of businesses that will see this economy grow.
And the ideas that are going to bring the money, innovation. People will profit from their own innovation. You know, we not have the monopolistic type situations that we have now, where just a few companies get big, but rather everyone can become big. Like a Facebook emerged a few years ago, and look where Facebook is today. It has displaced a lot of the larger companies that we used to hear about, like a Microsoft.
When we can become producers and not just consumers, and everybody can use these little devices to do a lot more. When we start inventing these types of devices and the apps that they run. Well, that's our show. I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks to all our viewers, our sponsors, our guests, of course, our hardworking production team. Big up all the time. I'm Kalila Reynolds.
And I'm Dennis Chung. Till next time.
On Point was brought to you by National Baking Company.